Hi, it's Chris P. Williams here. I hope you're well. Today we're going to be looking at enhancing eyes within Affinity Photo. Our subject today is Olivia, and I've imported this image as a background layer on our layers palette. We need to make a selection of Olivia's eyes, and to do this we're going to be using the elliptical marquee tool. It can be found in the left hand toolbar, 7th button down. If you don't see it, just left click that button, drag across and scroll down to elliptical marquee tool. Before we start making our selection, we need to check a few things. In the top left hand corner we've got 4 buttons: new, add, subtract and intersect. You need to make sure that new is selected just by left clicking it. Also need to look at our feather. You can use the drop down slider to increase or decrease that to 15 pixels, or we can just double click the digits and type in 15. Finally, we need to look at the from center checkbox and make sure that's ticked as it is here. Okay, let's zoom in on Olivia's eyes and making sure the elliptical marquee tool is selected. We're going to left click in the center of the first eye and we're going to drag out just enough so that we leave the outside edge of the iris visible. Now we need to make a second selection on the second eye, but before we do that we need to change the selection process to add. So go into the 4 buttons in the top left hand corner, left click the add button. If we didn't do that and left it as new and proceeded to make a second selection, you can see our previous selection disappears. So let's press Ctrl and Z to undo that. Click on add and then start making our second selection. Again, we need to stop slightly shy of the outside edge. Okay, we're now going to remove the pupils from our subject because we don't need those to be affected by the adjustment. And to do this, we need to click on the subtract button in the top left corner, start our selection from the center of the pupil, and this time we need to stop just outside the outside edge. And we'll repeat that for the second eye. And that looks good to me. You'll notice we've captured part of the eyelid in our selection, and we're going to fix that now using the quick mask feature within Affinity Photo. Now to access quick mask, we can press Q on our keyboard, which is a shortcut, or in the top toolbar you see this white box with a black circle inside. We can just left click that and you see the screen turns red. The red area is actually the mask, and that's the area that's concealed, and the clear area is the area that's going to be affected by our adjustment. So let's fix these eyelids and add them to the selection by using the paintbrush tool. So if you go to the left hand toolbar and just click on the paintbrush tool. Now we need to make sure our selected color is black. If it's not, just click on the black swatch in the colors tab in the top right corner, and we can start painting in that eyelid. You can see as we paint, that area turns red, and that indicates that the area is being incorporated into our mask, which is what we want. If it was turning clear, then you're using the wrong color. You must be painting in white. So just switch it back to black and have another go. Okay, so that's incorporated the eyelids. Another thing to look at, just beneath the eyelid you see this area of shadow. Now the adjustment that we're going to make doesn't lend itself too well to areas of shadow, so let's just paint those over to incorporate those into our mask as well, just to ensure they're not affected by the adjustments to come. Okay, that's looking good to me. Right, we can now press Q, or we can click on the quick mask button to turn off our quick mask feature, and you can see we now have a selection that incorporates just the irises of Olivia. Okay, we can now make our first adjustment, and in this case we're going to use the selective color adjustment to adjust the color and contrast of Olivia's eyes, and we find this in the adjustment tab at the bottom of our layers palette, the little white and black circle. Just left click that and scroll up to selective color. Now before we start making any adjustments, we need to change our blend mode. In the bottom right hand corner of the selective color dialog, we can see a blend mode drop down. Just left click on that and select add. And you can see this has had a dramatic effect on our image already, which is probably way too much. Now to adjust this, we're going to use the opacity slider on our layers palette and just bring that effect down. Ordinarily you'd be looking around 20 to 25, but for YouTube, just so that the effect comes across a little bit better, I'm going to use around 40. Okay, we can now start looking at the color of Olivia's eyes, and to do this we're going to look at the color drop down. You can see currently it's red. We need to change this to neutrals. Need to make sure that the relative tick box is checked, and now we can start making adjustments to color. The cyan slider, if I take it to the left, will add red. If I take it to the right, will add cyan. So I'm just going to add a little bit of cyan just to keep it with the natural color of our subject's eyes. The magenta slider, taking it to the left, will add green, and taking it to the right will add magenta, neither of which are required for this image. So I'll leave that centered. And finally the yellow slider, taking it to the left will add blue, taking it to the right will add yellow. So we need to add a little bit of blue just to boost the color. Okay, so that's looking good enough to me. Next we need to look at contrast, and to make this adjustment we need to switch to the blacks color. So just click on this drop down and select blacks, and using the black slider, taking it to the left will decrease contrast, and taking it to the right will increase contrast. So I'm just going to add about 9, and again that looks quite good to me. I'm going to return back to the neutrals because I think there's a little bit too much blue in this image, so we'll drop that accordingly, and I think we're about right. So now we can close this dialog. Okay, I'm going to press Ctrl and D to turn off my selection, and I can turn the adjustment layer on and off so you can see the overall effect of that adjustment. Right, we can now move on to our next adjustment, which is sharpness, but before we do we need to bring back our selection, and to do this we're going to press Ctrl and we're going to click the Selective Color adjustment icon, and you can see our selection is returned. We can now add our next adjustment layer. This layer is going to be a live filter, so we're looking at this little hourglass shaped icon at the bottom of the layers palette. I'm just going to left click that, and we're going to drag up to unsharp mask. We've now got the live unsharp mask dialog. I'm going to increase radius to about 2.5, and then we're going to use the factor slider to increase or decrease the amount of sharpness according to taste. Once we're happy, we can close that dialog. Now we can press Ctrl and D to get rid of our marching ants. I'm going to select both layers and we'll turn those off and on, off and on. So I'm sure you'll agree it's had a marked effect on enhancing our subject's eyes. If I zoom out for you by pressing Ctrl and 0, that's without and that's with. Hopefully you found this tutorial useful. If you did, please give me a like and leave a comment. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I've got plenty more tutorials for you to watch. But as always, more importantly, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.